being here today. I know it takes time out of your schedule, and yet with you being in the room, that tells me that you're learning bass, which is awesome, and part of the reason why we are with Kelly Waves. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Kelly Maniateas. I am a MAPS agent and leadership coach, as well as the founder of MCI Consulting. I've been in real estate 18 years, so I started when I was 4, and been a coach for the last 5 years now. So real estate is in my blood and always will be in my blood. I can never imagine being outside of this industry. And I've done every single role you can think of in real estate, including selling, answering the phones at the front desk, being an MCA, being a buyer's agent, even doing some ISA work. I mean, it's pretty much anything you can think of I did, even dropping signs off at one point as a runner. So real estate is my passion, which is why I'm here today. And I also want to let you know, for those of you that know the disc, I am a DI. So that means I move very quickly and I get energy from you. So if you're very quiet, like we all were in the first few minutes while we were waiting, it's not going to be a great class. So I need you to be interactive and engaging and asking questions, because that's what's going to make it valuable for you. And because I'm a D, I do move fast. So for anybody that feels like I'm moving too fast, just say, hey, Kelly, stop being a D. Let me know, I'll slow down. Whatever you need, because I want to make sure that this class is valuable. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, perfect. So before we start, farming is a very specific topic. So what brought you into the class today specifically about farming? What are your challenges? Ooh, right away, yes.
Our office needs to take more market share,
Yeah.
and I want to be able to help our agents achieve that with my role in the office.
Okay, all right, so gaining market share, the office in general, awesome, love it. What else, guys? Must be some reason you're in the room. Either you're not doing it, or not doing it very well, or choose to do it better. So, yeah.
I'd like to gain more market share in my neighborhood where I live and sell also. But there's, I think there's a number of agents. No one's really, no one agent or 2 agents have really captured that neighborhood, and so it's all over the place. And I'd like to capture it, take market share.
Awesome. Okay, so gaining more market share in your neighborhood. It was where you live?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. What else?
I would like to start tapping into my farming area. Haven't done it. I have been working, we can say it's farming area, but it's not geographical farm. I want to start geographical.
Okay, so just at the beginning, starting the process.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Scary, not really excited about it. That's why I'm looking for inspiration.
Okay, awesome. Awesome, yes?
I'd like to tap into my neighborhood too, but it's dominated by some top players. So I've always been, I sort of felt like, what's the point of going against them? But I live in the area and I know the area, that's the best area that I know personally.
Yeah.
So that's the question, how do you go about taking on some big players in the area that you live?
Okay. I'll make sure to talk about that. Awesome. Yes?
So I want to know like a step before the whole stuff, like what are the like key factors to look for before before choosing a farming area? How to choose a farming area? Second, what would be the best tools and techniques or approaches to get into it and make it more effective? This is what I'm looking for.
Okay. Perfect. Anything else that hasn't already been said? No? Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Does anybody currently have a farm right now that they're working? Yes? Sort of?
Sort of.
Get in there.
Get in there? Okay. So what point in the process are you right now? Obviously you've identified the area.
Identified the area. I've been marketing there for about a year.
About a year? Okay.
Yeah. I had a couple of listings and a couple of buys.
Couple of buys.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So
Awesome.
it's not consistent.
Okay. So would I say it's for mostly everybody in the room, this is pretty fresh, meaning you haven't started the process or you're just right at the very beginning of it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, all right, well, let's get into it then. Today's class is Farm Your Way to Financial Fortune, which is awesome because we know profit funds are life worth living, right? At the end of the day, that's what everything is for. So when it comes to farming, farm equals a market segment. So like picking the specific area, right? And narrowing down that market into a niche inside of that market. And that's going to tie a little bit into how do we go against the big players that might have already a foothold in that area. So when you're looking to farm, you're looking to have market dominance. And you know, if you've got a farming area that has a lot of individuals in it, market dominance could mean 2% in comparison to everybody else. If you've got a market where there's not a lot of players in it, then market dominance could be a much bigger percentage depending on who you are competing with inside of that farming area. So when you look at how do you decide, one of the research things that you would look at is who is in the area that's currently doing business in a 12-month period. You know, who has the listings in that 12-month period. So you can get an idea of what the market share split is currently before you even tap into that market. So it'll be one of the things that we would look at. Okay? So when we look at that, we hear from Gary Keller that we want to be the local expert, right? We even have a tool that you can get from your MCA to show how you are a local expert inside of the farm that you choose. And what does that mean to be a local expert?
Well, to be informed, I guess, on, you know, community events, what's happening, builders coming up, information that's valuable to people maybe wanting to move into the area or even sell.
Okay, so I heard in that value, right? So you said community events. What else would be valuable?
Current builders, projects coming up.
Okay, what else?
Statistics.
Statistics?
The market, what's selling, what's sold, pricing. Yeah.
Okay. What else?
Schools.
Schools? What else?
Crime rate.
Crime rate? In some areas, and it's very, very important. Yes. What else?
Generally neighborhood parks, like places to go eat, places to entertain.
What else? All of these things, would you say most people give or no?
Yes.
From a real estate perspective, if you're in the industry.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we look at that, there's a specific word in there which is called a niche. So a niche is what makes you unique. It's part of your unique value proposition. It's what helps you gain market share in an area. So when you look at this list and you go to approach your market in deciding where you would like to do it or in looking at where you're already doing it, what is going to make you unique versus all of the other people that are currently working to farm your market? So if you look at somebody like, for instance, Susie Holmes. Does anybody know who Susie is?
Yeah.
Okay, so Susie understood what it meant to have a niche. And she created her entire business around schools. Exactly right. So that's her niche. Her website is the main website to go to identify the rating of any schools in any area. So people actually find her because they're looking at schools, not because they're looking for an agent. So she is the expert in schools. So that's her niche.
Wow.
So when you look at the market you're going to choose, what's going to set you apart from everybody else that's currently working that market? What's going to make you the expert? Because the expert means specialization. Because you can't be an expert in everything. This is more of an expectation of information that our customers are looking for. So think about, what are you going to specialize in the specific market that you choose to farm? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And who created the list of what was valuable? It's a trick question, I know.
Realtors,
Agents.
Yes. And yet, who's the one that dictates value?
customers.
Customers. So think about, how could you gain what would be valuable to them in order to find your niche and where you're going to focus. So for instance, if you're door knocking, instead of giving them what you think is value, what would happen if you actually asked them what would be valuable for them to know about their own area that they're not already getting? Then you can be unique to your market versus operating in assumptions that this is what's going to make them call you. Any questions on that? You guys are quiet.
So when you door knocked, what is your question? You door knock, you actually ask a question?
Absolutely.
So how does that, what is an example of you come to knock on my door?
So, hi, my name is Kelly Maniateas. I work with Keller Williams Realty.
Right.
I'm looking to make sure that I offer you the value that you choose to have in understanding your specific neighborhood. So I wanted to ask versus assume, what would be valuable to you to get on a monthly basis to know about your neighborhood that you're not already getting?
That's what you opened that. Okay.
Absolutely. You know, obviously it's going to be part of the script of introducing myself. If it's a market that I just moved into, for instance, that now I'm a neighbor, the introduction would be a little bit different. If it's a market that I'm looking to work in but I don't necessarily live in, it could still be that I'm coming into the area. I wanted to let you know that I'm here as your local expert for you to know anything and everything about your neighborhood and any neighborhood you choose to move to in the future.
Okay.
So it's going to be, depending on how you're entering that market, will dictate the script that you use. And yet at the end of the day, people want to be heard, right? They don't want to be told, they don't want to be sold. So if you can create a conversation where you're actually asking their opinion on what would be valuable, that is going to be different than any other agent that shows up at that door. Because most of the time it's, knock, knock, I'm your expert, here's all the information I know that you want. By the way, I'm going to put you on my email list and give you the same exact thing everyone else does every single month. It's not a connection, right?
How's the interest level shown by the customer after you pose this question to them?
Very interested, because nobody else is doing it. Nobody else is actually asking their opinion. No one's taking the time to come to their door, face to face, and create that connection. It's very different than what most agents do, if at all. Because when we look at a market that already has top players in it, what's the likelihood that they're door knocking that market on a consistent basis? Zero. I can tell you, I've lived in my neighborhood, and I'm in Mississauga. I've been there 8 years. And I get mail every single month. Realtor postcards. Just listed, just sold, market statistics. My door has not been knocked once in 8 years. And I live at home, so I'm actually going to answer the door. Like, I work from home. Nobody's door knocked. Not a single person. So when you look at a market that has big players, that is your very first piece to look at. They're probably not farming it the way that they could.
Do they know that you're a realtor?
Nope.
Sometimes I door knock and say, oh, the neighbor here's a realtor. Oh, okay, great.
Nope.
Nice.
Nope. Because I actually rent that property. It's an investment property for me. So I'm in that property right now because I'm waiting for another house to be built.
Yeah.
So even if they were to look up the records,
Yeah.
they wouldn't know that I'm in real estate.
Yeah.
Yes?
So in your experience, what information do they want to know that they're not getting?
In my experience?
Yeah.
Places to eat that nobody knows about. And if you live in a neighborhood, your neighborhoods normally have like a mom and pop place that does no advertising, right? It's like that hole in the wall that you only know about because you live there. Those types of things, especially if they're new to the neighborhood, they don't know those things yet, right? Vendors that are surrounding the neighborhood. New vendors, businesses coming in, businesses offering discounts, especially if they're on my mailing list, they get access to discounts from vendors in their neighborhood that they wouldn't normally get. That's a value to them. Also understanding other markets. I've had people say, you know, in the next 5 years I plan to buy a cottage. I'd actually like to know about information about cottage country. How is it changing? What are the laws up there? You know, what's it cost to get water access? I wouldn't normally give them those statistics because I'm giving them statistics on their own market they live in, right? But because I asked the question, that's what brought up. And it wasn't even, are you looking to buy or sell? It was, what would be of value to you? And that just gave me a future buy deal. Yes.
So then your monthly email, do you tailor it to that specific person, or?
No, I'll do a general theme in the area. So usually what happens is if something is valuable to one person, the likelihood that it's valuable to somebody else within the same farm is higher. And what I'll do is, with my people on my email list, I'll also send a feedback survey every 3 months. Because I want to know if their values are changing. Because does life change? Yeah. Are schools necessarily important when you don't have kids?
No.
And yet, if I get pregnant and have another child, right, will school become important to me?
Yes.
Yes. So I consistently look back to my farm and ask them for feedback because their situations might change, which means what they value will change in what's important to them. And at the end of the day, the point I want to get across is never operate in assumptions. Assumptions are a versation, not a conversation. And a conversation is what creates relationships with your farm. A versation is what most agents do in a farm. Does that make sense? Just
Hot in here. Yep, I'll get
Open
that.
this door.
I was here when you guys had like the smaller training room, so I absolutely love that we have this big room. Okay, we haven't even made it past the first slide. You ready for the next one? All right. So, myths about farming. Farming takes too long and costs too much. Farming can become the core of your business. So the myth, it takes too long, the truth is it can become the core. So when you look at farming done correctly takes about 6 to 18 months to start seeing a consistent result. So it's a long game. It's not a short game. So when you look at choosing a farm, you want to make sure you do all the research ahead of time to ensure that you're willing, A, to put the time, and B, the funds to actually farm. Right? Because we're talking about adding value on a consistent basis. If you do this by email, there's still going to be a cost associated to it because you've got to take time to create the content, right? Time is money. You might have somebody who does it for you, which means now it costs to hire somebody to do that, whether it's a regular program or an actual person. So in looking at your farm, knowing that it takes that amount of time to get a consistent result, you've got to be very particular on where you choose to farm. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay.
So 6 to 18 months, but what does that consist of in terms of a monthly basis? Door knocking every day? Is it sending out flyers once a week, once a month, twice a month?
Yes, yes, and yes.
3 times a month? How many flyers would you expect to send out every single month? Is there a magic, there's no magic number, but what's the ideal from your perspective?
I would say having something in their mailbox once a month is important, something physical. And from an email basis, I mean, you could do that bi-weekly, depending on how you change what value you're providing. Whatever you mail is not going to be the same thing as what you email, if that makes sense. And door knocking, it depends how big your farm is. So for instance, if you look at Tom Mitchell, right, he's got a big farm area, very segmented into sections. It's every door once a quarter, right? If you've got a smaller farm area with a lower amount of doors, then you break it up into how many doors can you hit a 30-day basis. So you might end up door knocking once a month, depending on the size of your farm.
What's your idea of a small farm size-wise?
I've seen as small as 500 doors. I've seen as big as 10,000 doors. So from a size perspective, I mean, 500 is pretty small. However, it could be considered a bigger farm depending on the turnover rate. If it's a new area that has a lot of new construction, that's got a lot of homes turning over, even though it's a small size, it's a big farm in terms of return, right? So it depends on how you look at the language of large versus small. And again, that's something you would research. What's the turnover rate in that area? Because that'll also dictate what kind of return you're looking at in respect to the investment you make in the farm. And don't forget, it's not just financial, it's also time.
How can we say that the turnover rate is sufficient? What's the number, or how do you do that? How do you check?
How did you do that for the farm you chose?
I looked for, I mean, I set my own boundary, so I wanted minimum 5% turnover. I looked at the sell price, what the average commission looks like, what would the expected share that I'm looking to get, how much. I mean, this is all details I did at high level, but I also looked in terms of how much I'm going to be spending on the farm and whether, let's say I was looking for a 5% share, whether that commission check was going to cover the cost.
Does that make sense?
So if anyone needs, I have downloaded something from KW University that takes you through the steps of deciding how to feed your farm. So it asks you each question and then you answer it and then you get a calculation at the end.
Perfect. There you go. So after this class, make an appointment.
I also looked at who, if any, agent dominates the area. I try to avoid the big agents.
Well, remember, I mean, most of the time the big players are in place because they're the ones that are putting the most money in dropping stuff in mailboxes.
Yeah, right now my question is whether, I mean, I was avoiding it when I first was choosing my area, but now I'm in an area where I've been, as I said, farming for about a year, and I'm finding, so there was, last month there was 10 homes for sale in that area, and my farm is 1,500 homes, so there's 10 homes for sale in that area, and not one agent had 2 listings. So there's 10 different agents, and there's agents from Burlington, from Milton, from, I don't know where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And why are they going with this individual? I mean, I blame myself, because I should have knocked those doors more consistently, but.
It's all about relationship. It really is. It's about connecting to the agent in a way where it's a win-win relationship. And you'll find that a lot of people would use their agent regardless of where their agent works, unless it's impossible for them to actually work in the area they're asking to move to, and then that'll become a referral. And yet most times, I mean, I bought a house up in Barrie, and I used a Mississauga agent for it because I knew the Mississauga agent, and I trusted him. So he's the one that's looking at a house in Barrie, right? So that's how you see those agents coming in.
Which is, it's an area full of seniors, so maybe, I don't know. I could see when it's younger,
Yeah.
sure, I think there's a tendency to use
Yep,
the agent that you're familiar with.
yep.
When you're older,
I think that's the seniors would use people. that are
Exactly.
familiar
Yes,
with
they
the
would.
work.
I
But it
agree.
could also be that you're having, you know, their kids are getting involved and saying, oh, and they're the ones who are living in Milton and Burlington, because can't
Yeah.
afford here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And they're saying, oh, well, this person I used to buy this home a year ago, you
yeah.
know, you should use them, so.
yep,
Could be a relative.
could be anything.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. It could be someone that has drops their mailing card every month or every 2 weeks consistently. You know, like Nelson Campos does that. He just drops off his business card to everyone, you know, and you think, who's gonna work with a guy who's dropping off a business card? But it works. He gets systems out there.
Yeah,
Oh, he gets it. He also has the combination of the open house signs and for sale signs.
Well, there's that too, but
That
he gets
complements
up, he
it.
has a lot of
well, yes, having signs in the yard
Yeah, that's good.
absolutely
That's-
definitely
yeah.
helps you, you know, expand your farm influence. Because that's really what we're talking about, right? We're talking about influence. It's not just market share in respects to having signs in the yard, it's mind share. And how do you create mind share at a higher level?
Yeah.
And when you said seniors in the area, the very first thought in my head was, are you doing a seniors seminar in the area?
I'm not. You know, it's funny because I reached out to Mike, oh, Abe, we missed 2 of your seminars. I'm like, oh, yeah, well, maybe next time. Actually, I didn't do any seminars in the area, so I don't know what the hell they're talking about. But I'll take
That's
it back.
okay.
Yeah, no, I took that. So obviously it made me think, right? Now I gotta start looking at seminars.
Yeah, absolutely. What kind of value could you add to seniors?
Yeah.
And become the authority around that.
So what seminars would you teach seniors?
I would
Well,
say something
well,
just about retirement homes,
Yes.
like transitioning from your family home to a retirement home.
Yep, absolutely.
Care for your
Downsize.
property, like if you can't cut your grass anymore, or like
Yeah.
different options for staying in your home longer,
Absolutely.
you know?
Teresa Baird out of Mississauga does a service called Sell and Stay.
It's called what?
Sell and Stay.
Sell and stay?
Yes, so the seniors that are in their homes that need to get equity out of their home but also don't want to move, she finds buyers that'll assume them as tenants for 5 to 10 years. So they get to sell and still stay in their home in a long-term lease. So that's a program that she talks about in seniors areas as workshops, because it's something they don't know about. And how many would love to stay in their own home? I mean, most of the time, that's the worst thing, moving out of their lifelong home, right? So, you know, and again, you've got to work your neighborhood and understand what's valuable to them.
A lot of seniors, a lot of seniors who, because I keep my tax office, so they're paying like huge amount of tax because they don't know. They're just putting money into like 20 different banks, 10 different banks, insurance, RSPs, like they've been told since the Great Depression, and they don't know how to take that money out strategically to pay less tax. So a lot of people need some tax planning help too, so that would be a great seminar to help with so that they're not paying like $300,000 in tax on their estate planning, and they can be more to their family.
Well, let's see, that's another thing, estate planning, right?
And another thing is, this is just came to my head, but those customers that say, you're getting me out of the house feet first, great, so you're not leaving. Are you getting equity out of your home to live a life that you want right now in order to, like, using the equity in your home? Fantastic, I'm inviting you to this in this seminar for Sell and Stay.
I mean, it's, and again, you won't know the answer until you ask,
Yes.
right? So recognize the demographic in the area you're choosing to farm and start thinking about what would be valuable, and then go ask the question and see what lines up, right? And once you figure out what is value to them, then be relentless on giving that. Don't just be somebody who asks somebody's opinion and doesn't do anything with it. Because that'll kill it, absolutely. So when it comes to looking at farming and making it the core of your business, I mean, we talked about door knocking, right? Another way to gain presence is neighborhood events, right? I just saw Kirby Chan do a whole neighborhood garage sale, right? That everybody was in and awesome, and it's his one thing that he does, right? In that neighborhood for his farm. So make yourself visible. right? If you're looking at a farm that has a lot of community events going on that you're not hosting, show up to them. Get to know the people. Have a presence in what's important to them. Because if they're out to a community event, then that event is important to them, right? So associate yourself with that.
I think most days, most communities have like a Facebook group or something too,
Yeah.
so like make sure you're on it.
Or
Yeah.
create one
Or
for your
create one.
community.
Yeah.
Yep. Create a community Facebook page. Absolutely. Absolutely. See, you're already coming up with ideas. The question at the end of the day, though, will be what will you follow through on? Okay. So myth number 2. Someone else already dominates the area. And again, no one is ever as dominant as you think. And most of the time that's because they're not doing exactly what we're talking about. Most of the time it's because they're flooding it with mail and they've got signs in the yard and they don't actually connect with the farm. Somebody like Gene Rivers. You guys know who Gene Rivers is? Yes, okay. So Gene Rivers, right, after he went through that tragedy in his life and him and his wife started a new farm, there were tons of dominant players in there. And yet he started taking market share 90 days in because he was the only one door knocking. He was the only one. And people, just like how somebody gets associated with a seminar even though we didn't hold one, that happens a lot when you're the face at the door on a consistent basis. They start to see you more and see your name more, even though you're not necessarily there, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So, so something as simple as door knocking could definitely break a market. Providing community events, having the Facebook group, seminars, yes.
Any suggestions in terms of how early to do a community event? Because some of them cost money, a lot of money. So would you do it early on in your farming stages, or would you wait until there's a little bit more recognition before you start investing that big of a lump sum, if you will?
Well, I think there's things that you can do from a community perspective that doesn't cost anybody, right? Having the garage sale, I mean, other than a couple of signs, maybe in the stationary area inside of the neighborhood, that may be some money there. But actually getting an email or a flyer or door knocking to something, letting them know that there's a neighborhood garage sale, it doesn't cost any money. So I think there's things that you can do that financially isn't going to be a big strain. To start getting your presence known before you get into bigger things, bigger events, like having a family fun day where there's a park in the neighborhood, maybe you rent bouncy castles and popcorn machine and everything else and have all the families come out because it's a high family demographic. That's going to cost you money, and yet that's also an opportunity for your neighborhood vendors to sponsor. Right? So think about creative ways where you can add value at the beginning that doesn't cost you, at least in money, cost you in time. And then work your way up as your dominance in that area goes up. Think about it in the future, because with farming is going to come with a budget, right? Yes, I said the word budget. So when you choose a farm, you're going to create a business plan around that farm. Just like some of the steps that you did. You know, what's the return that I expect? How many homes is it? What's the average commission? What kind of ROI am I going to expect on a yearly basis? Once it's set up, based on that ROI, what am I going to use in that ROI to add value back to my farm? What kind of market share am I going to have year 1, year 2, year 5? What am I going to do each year to expand that market share? With any type of business or segment of business, there's a business plan around it. Right? So think about that. So year 1 would be very small, more mind share type events, and then year 3 might be when you do that family day. Yes?
If you have a community event, how do you, so you're advertising a community event, but you also want to advertise yourself as a realtor, but you don't want to make it look like it's just realtor, you know, flashing lights with community event. You sort of want the other way around.
Yes.
So how do you like manage that, if you know what I mean?
Well, from a community event perspective, I mean, the biggest message you want to get is what's going on in the event, and yet you could have something like powered by Maniateas group, right, and have it down at the bottom. And you're going to do more than one round of marketing, right, for the event. It's not just going to be, here's one flyer, 30 days before, and forget about it. So if you're doing an event, you're going to advertise it, and then you're going to door knock it. And in the door knock is where most of the time I make the connection. Because I want them interested in the event first, and then when I'm at the door, that's when I say, oh, by the way, I'm your local expert in whatever, from a value perspective. Here's my card, and I'll go into my door knocking script around if you're ever thinking of buying or selling.
In my situation, I've been doing an event once a month for the last 3 years.
Yes.
And I never kept, well, the only way I connected to the fact that I'm a real estate agent is I email people to show up.
Yep.
And at the bottom, if they know I'm a real estate agent, but I don't, it's a soft sale.
Yep.
But recently, Snap came by, and they took some pictures.
Yes.
So they're coming, they're going to be putting out in June.
Yep.
So I wanted to buy an ad beside it for myself.
Yep.
But I wanted to sort of make it look like it's, it blends in together, but I'm a real estate agent.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm not sure how to do that in terms of basically the story or what I'm going to say in the ad. Do I put, like I have the picture logo, do I put in, do I even associate if you're thinking about buying or selling, or just focus on this community event and then I basically organize it?
Yeah.
And that's it.
That's it. That's it. Because at the end of the day, you want to become that person that's connected to adding value to the community. Because that's what creates the non-existence of commission breath, which I'm sure we all know, right? And when you live in a community that somebody cares about it enough to do events, to bring people together, to allow neighbors to get to know each other, that's really what's important to them. And when you have Snapped, for instance, which, by the way, if you can get into the paper for anything that you're doing, that's massive, right? Because most people will read their community paper. And most communities have one. So in the article about the event, you talk about the why behind the event. Why is it important to you? What does it represent? What's the outcome that you expect and the value it's going to add to the neighborhood? And then you have your buy and sell real estate section, which is smaller, still there. But what happens is they transfer the relationship connection, the why, the community service, the giving back to you. And that's what makes them call.
So my ad is just why I organized it.
Yes.
A little story.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what it's about. I mean, we just experienced that with Red Day, didn't we? We all have a second benefit of Red Day, which means we get to communicate that to our database, to our farms, how we give back, why we do it. All of that represents who you are. Who you are is what creates the relationship, not what you do. So anytime you have an opportunity to show who you are and the reason behind what you do for the communities that you market to, that'll automatically create a relationship and connection to the farm. And then all the activities around that are how you cement it through, yes, this is why I do it, and by the way, I'm in real estate. It's almost like an after effect.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. So when it comes to having big players in your market, they're not doing as much as you think they are. They really aren't. A lot of it is just because they have a large marketing budget, they're dropping a lot of stuff in the mail, And most of the time, if you really dig into it and you actually door knock that area, you can find a lot of things that you can do that nobody else is doing. And then you become the person to do that and be the best at it. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay. Am I going too fast or are we good? Okay. So, the next one. A farm limits you to that area or specialty. That's the myth. And the truth is, a farm does not have to be your only source of business. I think that was pretty straightforward. Do you agree? Yeah. Myth 4, it's all about mailers and mass marketing, which I think we just debunked. It's the synergistic impact of both marketing and prospecting. And the prospecting is where most people fail. I mean, it's very easy to just set up a drip campaign and have it go out every single month, right? Don't even need to think about it. You know, you have your mail campaign where you get your postcards done and they get automatically mailed. You don't even see them or touch them. It's just keeps going out, right? And we love that as agents. I mean, if we were great at those things, we wouldn't be an agent, we'd be a marketing person, right? So anything that can be automatic, we tend to use, and yet, that doesn't make you unique. Your prospecting is what makes you unique. Your follow-up is what makes you unique.
When you were trying to pick a farm area, did you try a few different ones?
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting when you grow in your real estate career, right, you learn a lot through failures. And I think that's probably part of the reason why I'm up at the rim a lot, because I made a heck of a lot of mistakes. And there's areas that I chose to farm that didn't work out, for one reason or another. Most of the time it was my own fault because I didn't put the effort in to really break the farm. So yeah, there's been, I think, a few times where a farm didn't work out. And one is because I didn't stick to my door knocking plan. And the other one, which is the lesson I learned about asking the question. I made the assumption of what was valuable. That's where I came up with that question, because I realized what I didn't do, and then decided, okay, I learned from my lesson, what can I do to not do that again? So when you look at a farm, especially if you have one that's not returning what you expect, ask yourself the question, what am I not doing? Because it's easy to think about what I could do. Seminars, community events, door knocking, right? There's a ton of things that we could do, and usually that's overwhelming from a brain space perspective. And yet, you know what you're not doing. That if you actually did it, would give you a return. Yes?
How long do you suggest that you give before you know that it's not going to work out?
Well, most of the time it's 6 to 18 months.
So you would do it that long and then
Yeah.
determine.
Yeah, and most farms fail because people will go into a farm not realizing it takes that long. And they'll be 5 months into it, 6 months into it, 9 months into it, still don't have a deal and give up. Because it's not giving a return yet.
So a lot of times, people set the expectation that you should expect a deal in the first 6 months.
Not in a farm. I mean, you might get one,
Yeah.
however, it's not consistent. Right? Because the point is to create a consistent business. Not one-offs that just show up randomly. Because you can't expand that. Because if you can figure out a farm and do everything you know you could do in that farm, and you start to get consistent business with it, can you then take that system and put it in another farm area? Yes or yes?
Yes.
Yes.
The basics.
The basics.
Find out what's
Still
valuable
gotta
for
find
them.
out what's valuable, right? What works in that niche, absolutely. And yet the systems that support it, you can box and move. So from a farm perspective that you might get something in 6 months, I would say a farm is working if you have consistent business based on your business plan that you set up for that farm, and that you can answer the question, can I box this and do it? Because if you can't box it, then there's something you're not doing and you know you're not doing it. Does that make sense? Okay. Myth number 5. You can stop and start your farming efforts. I think we just talked about that. You must pursue your farm consistently and persistently. That's not a surprise. I mean, how often do things work that you get the outcome you intended when you start and stop, start and stop, start and stop, start and stop? I mean, that's pretty much life, right? Really? I mean, let's see. Who here has bought a gym membership and never actually showed up?
Never showed up at all.
Never showed up at all.
Well, I have been going, so I haven't been going for 3 years.
Yeah? Or who bought a gym membership and went for maybe 30 days to 60 days and then stopped going? Yeah?
I did it all.
Yeah, see? So you go in with an intention, and yet the habits that support that intention haven't been formed yet, right? It's like building a new muscle. I was just talking to a client about this today. He's going on a golf tournament next week. He hasn't golfed in 8 months. So what do you think his body is going to tell him when he goes golfing? I hate you, right? He's going to be using muscles that he hasn't used in a while. And when you use muscles that you haven't used in a while, what happens?
Sore.
You get sore, right? Because you're tearing and reforming, tearing and reforming. It's the same thing with habits and growth. So if you're not waking up sore every day, can you really say that you're growing into who you intend to be and what you intend to have, right? I just segued there into my coaching hat went on for a second. I apologize.
As you get older, you're waking up sore and sore as well.
Yes, then you got to be okay. So what is this soreness from? Yes, I know. I just turned 40. It was an interesting birthday. However, I will say that I got into KWYP before that happened, so now we can
Yay!
Yeah. Oh, the 40 is the new 20 anyways. At least that's what I'm telling myself. Okay. So, from a geographic farm, 10 factors to consider. Your goals. Begin with the end in mind. That's tying back to our business plan conversation. What do you expect to get out of that farm? Because goals are what creates the plan. The plan is what creates the actions. The actions is what creates who you have to be in order to do those actions. Your budget. Oh, see, I'm not the only one who uses that nasty word. Having a budget around your farm. And not just a one-year budget. Think long-term. This is a long-term investment. The size. 500 doors, 1,500 doors, 5,000 doors. What does that look like? What size do you want your farm? Location. Obviously that's important. Having Mets versus Mets. What's the difference between those two? Yes?
8x8 touch.
Which is now 7x7.
Oh,
Yes?
since when?
Since the new models have been released through Maps
Bold.
Coaching and Bold. So if you have a Maps Coach, you would know what the new
I
plans
do.
are.
You didn't share that with me.
Oh, well there you go. Now you have a topic for your next coaching call. So it's a 36, 19, and 7. No longer in 8, 12, 33.
What does that mean?
36
In a cold,
touches.
okay, yeah.
The 7x7 is along the same lines as the 8x8, right? Getting a lot of market share right up front really quickly. And then the 19 to cement.
So, if I may, you can correct me, but from my understanding from the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, when you are going after a farm and you meet someone and that you haven't met before, the idea is you talk to them every week for 7 weeks, so that you now have them from haven't met to, after talking to them at 7 different touch points, to have met.
Got it.
Yeah.
And obviously you want your farm to have a lot of METs in it, because you get a higher conversion rate or an ROI. And those numbers have changed as well. So I would suggest, since this seems to be new to the room, having a class on the new systematic lead generation, which will also connect in command. And how do you work with those programs and also use the leverage of command in supporting them.
Paige and I promised to set everybody up on that class.
Yeah. So looking at the area and your database, which means you actually need a database, which is split up into METs versus habitats, to understand how much of your database actually lies within the farm, or doesn't. Because you're going to approach those two types of contacts differently, right? Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Average sales price. We brought that up, right? Turnover rate. We brought that up. Market conditions. That would be important in a farm area.
What do you mean by that?
Well, let me ask. What do you believe market conditions are?
Buyer's market.
Demand and supply, that could be the turnover rate. Yeah. That would give you demand and supply.
Just like, is it a buyer's market, is it a seller's market? What types of property or products are attractive versus less attractive?
Who's moving into the marketplace currently? Is it, are you seeing a lot of downsizers? Are they moving from condos? Is this from a starter home to a sort of family home? Those sorts of things.
Yep. Yeah. Perfect. Competition? Who's in it already? Oh, you're fit for the farm. That would be important, right? Because we're building relationships with it. We're looking to offer value that's specific to the farm we want to work in. So how important would it be that the value you're offering is actually in alignment with who you are?
Very good.
Very important, right? You want to be authentic. People know when they're being sold. That's one that usually surprises everybody.
Yeah, I'm really surprised. Could you expand just one more time on that? You're fit for the farm.
You're fit for the farm. Does your speciality provide value to the farm that you're looking to get transactions out of?
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's where you can look at the other major, like the key bigger agents and say, how am I different from them?
Yeah.
Like who gravitates to that guy? Who gravitates to that person? Why am I different? What do I offer that they don't?
Yes. Yes. Because at the end of the day, that's really what it's going to come down to. What does make you different? What's your niche? What's your speciality?
Does the demographic affect this thing?
Of course. So for instance, the farm that you have seniors in, if you're not interested in providing seminars around seniors, if you don't connect very well to that age group, because they generally like to have conversations, right? They like the relationship aspect. Ooh. Phones on silent. That's my fault. I'll take the hit for that one because I didn't say it at the beginning. If you don't like that type of relationship, are you going to be really effective in doing those things with a demographic you don't connect to? Probably not, right? You'll do it for the sense of goals, you want out of it, and yet you'll never be as effective as you choose to be because your heart's not in it. If it's not a solution that you wake up every morning to solve when it comes to their value, then you've got to think about, am I the right person to do it? Make sense? Does that help?
That's such a huge help. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so the myth, farming can become the core of your business. The truth, farming can become the core of your business. So when you pick your area, you concentrate on a range of prospecting activities, whatever works with you. Not everybody is a door knocker, right? Not everybody is a caller. Not everybody's great at doing events, right? So figure out what's a good fit for you in providing the value that that farm chooses to receive. Do that first. The marketing comes later. Because at the beginning, you're going to be mailing out a lot of material that nobody has a connection to yet. I mean, most of the time when I get the real estate cards in the mailbox, the only reason I look at them is because I want to see, are they actually stepping up their game, or is this like everybody else? And I do that because I'm in the industry. If I wasn't in the industry, most of the time it goes straight in the garbage. Most of the time. And yet, if I had somebody knock on my door, ask me what was valuable to me, and let me know that I should expect something in the future specifically for that, then I'll actually look for it. Right? I won't throw everything in the garbage. So do your prospecting, get your face out there, create that as your first touch, and then follow it up with marketing to cement it. Does that make sense? Okay. Basically, at the end of the day, what you're doing is establishing your reputation first, then building relationships one at a time. So, becoming your farm expert for free. How many of you would like to do that? Yes.
No, because we need the write-offs. Tax write-offs. I want expenses.
Get a mouse coach.
Yes, there you go.
Get a mouse coach. All right, so how do we do it? Create a property search for yourself. Get to know what's upcoming, what's going on in the area. I mean, you can look at turnover rates, and yet put yourself in the seat of the farm. How can you connect to an experience you want to give them if you're not the person experiencing it? Right? Review the sold properties history. Now, what kind of market are you guys experiencing right now?
Great markets.
Great market?
Balanced.
Balanced? So sellers and buyers, it's not gone one way or the other?
I'm feeling sellers.
Sellers.
Depends where you are, I guess.
Depends where you are, okay.
Seller's market.
Okay, so when you see review the sold properties history, how often should you do that?
Daily.
I like daily. And yet, we also know how realistic we are in keeping to handling our time and following a time block. As I'm seeing some smiling faces, like, yeah, no, I don't do that. So, what would dictate the time around that?
Every Wednesday or something after the offer night.
Yeah, you could do it once a week. If you're in a really high turnover area, it almost might need a daily check. Right? Your market or your farm dictates how often you look at this. And yet you want to come across as a local expert, right? Well, in order to be a local expert, you need to know your inventory. Yeah, absolutely. And when you're first starting out, it's okay to print that out as your door knocking. You know, there's some agents, and I go to familiarity just because of where I work out of. Teresa Baird does this on a consistent basis where when she's out door knocking, she can pull off right off the top of her head. This sold for this much, that sold for that much, this is what's actively listed. She doesn't need the paper anymore. And yet it's okay to have the paper, right? Because it shows you did the work. So don't be afraid if you can't memorize that or you have a lot of going on in your farm. Bring it with you until you build that habit, right?
You can do that with Google Hard Drive too.
Yeah.
Load it up on Google Hard Drive and folders,
Yeah,
streets, stuff like that.
absolutely. Absolutely. Search past expireds and FSBOs, then call them. So obviously the expireds is not something we can do here. And yet FSBOs you can. I would walk my farm and see how many FSBOs are showing up. First of all, to know, okay, where did I drop the ball in my farming activity where a FSBO actually made its way into my farm. And then two, that becomes my urgent list. Because then I'm going to show up to that FSBO and add value to that FSBO and offer to host their open house and help them through that so that even if I don't get the listing, I still get the buy deal off of it. And most likely in what I'm offering is value and how often I'm showing up and connecting with them, it's going to turn into a listing anyways. Because they're clearly going to see what they're not doing. Does that make sense?
So when you host an open house for FSBO, you just put a little ad, signs up on the weekend, and that's...
Yeah, I'm already sending marketing out anyway, so it's not going to cost me anything to highlight that house in the marketing I'm already sending out.
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
So why not? I got signs in the yard on the open house.
right.
I have possibility of getting buyer deals. And every time that I'm there is another opportunity to poke holes in the FSBO plan. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? So eventually it's going to get me the listing. And it's another funnel for buyer deals. Make sense?
So let's say you get a deal, let's say you get first open house weekend, a buyer comes in and they wanna buy the house. So how do you negotiate the deal with the
Well,
FSBO?
that's up front. I mean, that first conversation with the FSBO where I get agreement to open the house,
Yeah,
we have a commission agreement in place. If I bring the buyer, this is what you pay.
and the price expectations are already set up from the beginning as well?
Yeah.
So he has this home listed for $1 million, you give him an offer for $920.
Yeah. If he chooses to accept it, great. He didn't list with anyone at that point, right? So he already saved on the listing commission. And because I offered value in that sale and brought the buyer, so I get commission off the buyer, I also now have that person in my database for a future sale because he just witnessed the value that I offer. So what's the likelihood that he's going to use me in a future purchase or somebody else? Pretty high, right? So it may not be now business, it'll be future business. Make sense?
Yeah.
You guys are right?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Really good.
Okay.
Reflective.
All right, preview current listings. That's a pretty much no-brainer, right? See what's currently listed in the area. And finally, walk the neighborhood and door knock. All of those things don't cost any money. And yet create a presence in your farm and increase your knowledge on that farm. Now, if you've got listings in your area, what should you do?
Just listed.
Well, if there's listings already, you're going to want to know your inventory, right? What's the best way to know your inventory?
Look at it.
Look at it. Go see it. Put your buyer eyes on it. Actually walk into the house. So that when you are door knocking the non-listings, right, then you've got first-hand knowledge. Because we all know the pictures do not represent the listing. We all know that. I mean, either they're virtually staged, or they're only of the rooms that look the best. Right? We all do it. So, preview the homes. So you've got real data, things that people can't see on the internet. Because then your information is valuable. because that's what we're competing with. Everything is on the internet now, right? Or at least what we choose to be. Make sense? What else? Send personal note cards. How many of you actually send out note cards right now? Not just to a farm, but in general.
Okay, not consistently. Yeah.
Not consistently?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, I saw an infographic the other day where I think it was like in the 1990s. There was a picture of a guy in his mailbox, like, oh, so much mail. And then beside it was a picture of a computer. I got an email, right? And you just see, so excited that today, right? Oh, so much email. And then the other side is, oh, I got a card. I mean, how often do we look forward to those handwritten notes now? And all we get in the mail now, if we get it, are bills, pretty much, or advertisements. So actually getting a card in the mail, something personal, that actually means more today. Because most people don't get it. So doing note cards, A, shows that you value the person you're sending the card to, because you're allocating time to write the card. You know, how often now, every week, do we put a stamp on something? I haven't put a stamp on something, I think, in, at least me personally, not through my business. 6 months. Yeah. Right? Christmas. And that's a once-a-year thing. Wow, I never really actually thought about that. How long has it been since I put a stamp on something? So having the note cards, it's great. It's a personal touch that most people don't do. Kudos for doing it. Know the competition and the marketing. That's important, right? Especially if you want to be unique. What are others doing?
So how do you get that if you're not living in the area? Because I was actually thinking about asking some of the contacts to put it in a bag for me.
If you've got somebody in the area that's willing to keep the mail for you,
If you
why not?
if you don't, then what do you do?
If you don't, well, generally what somebody does in one market, they do in all markets, right? Usually. The only thing that might change is the content, and yet they usually do it everywhere. So if you don't have a contact in your particular farm, the likelihood you have contact in a different farm is pretty good. And if you still don't have anything like that, look at their website. Most agents nowadays will put what they specifically do for a listing. And generally what they do for a listing is a lot of what ends up in their marketing materials. And let's be honest, most people do the exact same thing. Just listed, just sold, open house, right? They all do the same thing. The only thing that's different is their color scheme and whether or not they choose to be big font or small font.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
What is it, right? See? I mean, that, at the end of the day, that's what they most do. There's a perfect example of someone who does this really well. Kristen Cole. Do you know who she is? Some know? Yes? Okay. Kristen Cole is somebody from the States. Has huge expansionists, so has teams all over the country. And she was here 2 years ago teaching GSO. So her marketing tells a story. This is really the purpose of marketing, and I'm going to segue for a second. When you look to send something out, it's meant to make a connection with somebody. So when you think about telling a story, it's got to be something that they can personally connect to. So she did a marketing piece which had a big picture of a plane landing on water. What do you think that picture was of? It's now a movie.
Hudson.
It was Sully? Sully.
Yes. Yeah, right?
Which movie?
Sully.
Sully, where the pilot landed the plane on the water
Hudson.
in the Hudson River, right? So what's the likelihood most people have seen that movie or heard of that story? Pretty high, right? Yes. So when you've got a picture of a plane landing on water, what do you think about when you see that picture?
What's the emergency?
What's the emergency?
Rescue.
Rescue? Death? People dying?
Oh, I know that.
Man, you guys go on the negative route.
People being saved.
Saved, people being saved. Wow, thank God it was that pilot in the plane. Not everybody can do that, right? So above the picture she put, does experience matter?
Whoa, that's so huge.
Now, the automatic answer to that question, based on the feeling it evokes seeing that picture, it's a heck yes. And then it's her information below. So in creating the story, the main piece of it was the story of experience and how in that particular situation it does matter, and the reader transfers that to the individual, which in this case was Kristen. So that's what I mean in the marketing piece. Now, there's not very many people that do that. Have you ever seen a card that had a picture of a plane landing? No. I mean, most of the time it's a picture of a house, right? Or the agent. So when you look at marketing pieces, that makes her unique, doesn't it? It creates a personal connection. It used an analogy or a metaphor for them to connect to and then transfer that feeling to Krista. So, you know, knowing the competition in their marketing, yeah, you're going to see maybe some things in what they send out in the card, but it really ain't going to make that much of a difference. Because they all pretty much use all the same programs. Okay? Does that help? Yes. Okay. Hold open houses. That would be important. Even if they're for FSBOs, just like I said. Have presence. Join local organizations and attend events. We talked about that before. Showing up. And what's going on in the neighborhood. Doesn't matter if you're hosting it or not. If you're there, you have a physical presence. Become the king, queen of social media. Oh, she left. The idea of having a Facebook group for the community. And everything about that community. Any questions on those? No? Okay. I want to make sure I keep this on time here. Okay. Don't want to know. Do you need to check that?
Nope.
Okay. So, come from contribution. We talked about this before. You're going to see some alignment here in some things that are already there. Marketing report. Statistics. Create a directory. They used to have that a lot in neighborhoods. I don't know if they necessarily have that anymore. No. Yeah. Organize a neighborhood yard sale. We talked about that. Start a website for the neighborhood. Be hyper-local.
So an example of that would be Cynthia Ostos. She has a Mimico website and a directory. We were talking about, sorry, I just wanted to add command in here. Eat and parks on command. We have something called the local expert, which is hyper-local events that we can add insights, so into our insights. Yep. So you hear the Desjardins commercial where on the radio where they're like, your local Desjardins insurance person, they know where to eat, where to sleep, where to whatever, and everything, because they don't just know their business, they are part of their community. Yep. So it's along the lines of that.
Absolutely. Command is going to be huge on that. Because remember when we said, how do you become unique in your value and do you change it for everything you send out to every person? Command is going to do that. It's going to create hyper-local specific John Smith newsletter, which is different from Jane Smith newsletter, which happens automatically and you don't even actually have to touch it. That is the power of command. And if you're not using it right now to put in your local insights in specific areas, what do you think is going to feed the newsletter when it's available?
Local insights.
Right. And do you want them to be yours, or do you want them to receive them from somebody else? That was a live question. I would hope if you want it to be yours, right?
Yes.
So using it now to build all of that out, if you're looking at starting a farm, if you already have a farm, that's going to be important. Because when that feature becomes available, when the consumer app becomes available, if your farm contact information is not in your command database already, then they have the option to choose the agent. That doesn't guarantee it's going to be you. So preparing for all of this is important. To be able to have a lot of these things done hyper-locally. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Create a neighborhood email or Facebook group or blog. So, question. What are 12 items that you might send as part of your 12 direct, which is now 19?
May I ask what the reasoning behind the change from 12 to 19?
Based on the research that they've done since writing the first book, 19 had a more higher conversion rate than the 12.
Okay.
And because people have access to more information and technology is becoming more and more a part of our fiduciary side, 19 is now the new way in order to move somebody into a transaction.
Great, thank you.
So what would you put in it?
Birthday card or email?
Yep. Birthday card or email? What else?
Anniversary date.
Yep. Now do the home anniversary, not marriage anniversary. Why is that important?
Because it may no longer be active.
Unless you are the realtor that is in contact with your database on a consistent basis and you're tracking your notes and you're doing the right questioning to identify that type of information, don't send an anniversary card for marriage, okay? Because you don't know what has changed in their life. What else could you send?
Newsletter?
Newsletter, yeah.
Seasonal stuff.
Yep, seasonal stuff. Valentine's Day, Easter, Christmas, Thanksgiving. Yep.
Phone calls?
Yeah.
That's too much.
Yeah.
Game fixtures, match fixtures, like game fixtures, practice schedule, hockey.
Yeah, for the sports.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially if you have a farm that's got a community center in it, that maybe has an ice hockey rink or whatever. People usually move into that community because of their connection to sports. Yeah, kids, right? I mean, I've got 2 kids right now in rep soccer. So being close to a soccer field is important for me. Otherwise, I'm going to spend my entire life 6 days a week in the car outside of real estate. So yeah, anything sports related, absolutely.
And volunteer work, volunteer event,
Events,
events, yes.
Community events.
yeah, community events. What else? What are you currently sending right
City
now?
meetings,
Which one?
city meeting alerts.
City meeting, yeah, absolutely.
What was that, sorry?
City meeting,
Oh, city meeting.
yeah. Anything that might affect their area?
Yeah.
Yep.
I am trying, but I haven't done diligently enough, like Fun Friday posts. So it can be a joke or a picture, and this type of things people like. Before, after pictures people also like.
Yep. What else?
just listed, sold.
Yeah, I was waiting for that to come up. The regulars, just listed, just sold.
Your events, whatever events you are creating.
Yep.
Speaking of events.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's pretty much endless, right? And it's indicative of what is valuable to that farm. You're gonna have some things that will always be valuable to a farm, like statistics and market status. I mean, at the end of the day, yes, they are gonna wanna know aspects of what's going on in their neighborhood. And yet, you layer that in with what's unique to them. So let's look. Newsletter, market update, testimonials, just listed, just sold, your marketing programs, school calendars. I mean, I see that come out all the time around Christmas. It's your calendars for the upcoming year. I think I have like 4 different agent calendar magnet things on my fridge. I actually don't use a calendar, I just use it as a magnet. Just listed business cards, offer of a CMA, home inspection advice, website information, open house, seminar, holiday cards, sports calendars, circle prospecting letters. I mean, there's a lot of different things that you can do. And again, it's dependent on your farm and what's important to them. Here's what I want to add to this though. Gary has been talking a lot about becoming the local expert. How the technology is taking care of our functionary side of our role so that we can spend more time in the fiduciary side of our role. And we've got to think bigger than what we are right now. Most of us want to be the local expert when it comes to real estate. And yet real estate is a huge bucket. There's a lot of things in real estate. There's construction.
Pre-construction.
Yes, but construction in the sense of what's the difference with having a regular roof versus a clay tile? What does that mean in terms of wearability? How often do you have to replace that? What's the difference in how a foundation is created or the materials used in the house? What's the difference in the type of insurances that you can get? What's the difference in
Window crack.
yeah, everything, anything and everything.
Average cost to fix things.
Average cost to fix things. You know, what, based on the businesses surrounding your neighborhood, what's important about that in terms of resaleability in the future? Is it upcoming type of neighborhood? What's the demographics? There's so many aspects of real estate that we could be tapping into, and most of the time our focus is so small that we don't bring that type of information in. There is an agent in the States, and for the life of me I cannot remember his name, where he's actually the person that everybody calls to find out the best restaurant. Yeah, it's kind of weird, right? I mean, he's a real estate agent, and yet people are calling him to find out where they should be eating. But that's where he gets most of his business. Because he knows the businesses in his farm area so well, and he has connections with them in regards to getting discounts for his database, that everybody calls him. Hey, my anniversary is coming up, where should I eat? My wife likes Italian. What's the best Italian restaurant? So instead of him making outbound calls, he's getting inbound calls. And it's not just restaurants. Who's the best handyman? I just got a flat tire. Where's the best place to get new tires for cheap?
The handyman question becomes a bit risky, I feel.
You've got to be able to have a few that you can get. It's not just one. You've got a fiduciary duty to provide more than one option. And yet the point is, they're calling him. Does that have a better return on your time versus you making calls out? So he understood that becoming the local expert is more than just knowing what's listed and what's sold. He became the expert on anything inside that farm. And he positioned himself that way. He went out to his database and said, where's the best place to eat Italian? And he got all the reviews from his database. A, creates a touch. B, makes them feel heard because we're asking their opinion. And C, we now have data we didn't have before, which we can now add value to other people with.
That's a really good idea. Ask your database for referrals.
Yes. Absolutely. They live in the area. They would know, right? So just think bigger when it comes to being the expert. So what should it include? Your name or your team name. I mean, obviously you do want your contact information there. Otherwise it would defeat the purpose. Your website, how to refer you business. How many actually have that on their marketing materials right now? Does your database know how to refer you business, or are you just assuming? Yeah, I mean, of course.
What would you say for that?
I coach my family and friends all the time how to refer me business. And I refer it out too. I say, so if you ever have a friend who wants to buy or sell, please tell them that I'll chase them, they don't have to chase me, and if it's okay for me to have their number to give them a call.
Yeah. So on a card, it could be something as simple as, if you know someone looking to buy or sell, please contact, right? Please contact me directly. Because to be honest, yes, I would prefer to get the information from the referrer and make the call out versus them giving my business card and that getting lost or put on a counter or put on the fridge and never looked at again, right? You lose control when someone gives your information. You gain control when someone gives you the information. Make sense?
Yeah.
Your unique selling proposition, what we've been talking about the entire class, and a call to action. Hey, do this, right? Because at the end of the day, the whole purpose of doing all this is to get them to do what?
Business.
Business. Buy, sell, invest, or refer. All right, so the action plan. List at least one action you will take as a result of what you've learned today. And you all have manuals, although I don't know if any of you are going through it. So there is a page in your manual where you can actually write this out. Write down at least 3 actions. And then circle the one that you're actually going to do. Maybe one more minute. All right. So give me some ideas. What did you write down as your actions?
I would interview more people within one community. Then I will learn more about my farm before I start actually farming. I want to figure out which part of my community and that neighborhood I want to touch. and block time to call or follow up through messenger or email, whatever, and looking to command local incidents.
Okay, awesome. What else? What did you guys write down?
I really like the idea about open housing FISBOs. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. So much business you can get out of that.
And you can just totally impress them.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like showing up with a plate of food, like balloons on your sign, like just totally like show them this is how it's done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, because let's be honest, they're a FISBO because they really don't know how it's done.
No.
Most people don't understand what we do behind the scenes, right? Yes. What else? I saw you writing, so.
So I put down, I like the idea of seminars. I know it's not new, but I think it's very effective. So.
It is, absolutely. There's a lot you can add in that market, the seniors, for sure. And you don't have to recreate the wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And connect with the vendors, local vendors,
Yes.
and try to do the repo kind of thing, not like for the exchange of anything, like just because they have a footfall, they have people coming to their place, so building a repo may turn into referral and something like that.
Absolutely. They might never be the person to do business with you,
But
however, they
also-
can become the influencer
Yeah.
that gets you business. Awesome. Anything else?
Write the story in Snap, like you said, we talked about earlier,
Yes.
and contact a database about referrals.
Yes, teach them.
Yeah.
Teach them. They don't necessarily know. Okay, awesome. Well, in speaking of referrals, I would not be a role model if I didn't do the same thing. If any of you are interested in getting a MAPS coach, please let me know. My contact information is there. And if there's anybody interested in getting a consultation on systems or hiring talent or leadership, contact me at the info@mciconsult.ca because that's what my consulting business does. And my website's there with all my information on it. So thank you for showing up today. I hope it was valuable.
Yes.
Yeah,